Hi, and welcome to episode 69 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown on Ravelry, Instagram, Pinterest, and it's also the name of my Etsy shop where I sell project bags, DPN holders, and various things. I'm coming to you from the central west of New South Wales in Australia, and thank you to those near and far who are tuning in. It's lovely to have your company. I am going to be chatting about some works in progress this week. I have been doing a lot of lawn mowing recently, so my hands haven't really been up to knitting in the evenings, so I haven't made as much progress as I had hoped, but I do have some things to share with you and chat about. There's no spinning again this week, but hopefully I'll get my spinning mojo back again soon. And I have some sewing that I'll also chat about later on, as well as a bit of chatter at the end just about life in the countryside and what I've been up to. I'm wearing my Tascotakki cardigan, which is a pattern by Veera Välimäki, and I finished it a couple of months ago, so those who have watched the podcast before will have seen it, but it's been really, really fun to wear as the temperatures have been dropping out here. It's so nice and cozy, and it has a higher sort of collar neck going on, and it keeps the back of my neck nice and warm. So I do wrap a shawl around myself as I'm sewing away during the day, but just overall it's just been keeping my back nice and cozy, and I've been loving wearing it. So it's become a very treasured knit item for me. So for works in progress, I have been working on my twill skirt, and this is a paid for pattern which can be found on Ravelry by Anne Hansen, and it's not finished yet. I was kind of hoping that I could get it finished before this podcast, but it's still going. The number of stitches on it has increased dramatically as the shape of the skirt sort of flares out as it progresses. So I've still got, I think I've got about 3 inches to go or so before it's done. So it should be done well in time for the next podcast. It has become a bit repetitive. I still absolutely and utterly adore it and love it and think it's amazing, but the stitch pattern just basically continues down throughout the whole of the skirt until a bit of ribbing at the bottom. So it has become a little bit tedious knitting the same thing over and over again and having to pay attention to the cables and whatnot, but I'm still loving it. So I did take about, I think it was 4 nights off from working on this to work on some socks, which I'll show you shortly, and also to do some squares on my sock yarn blankets. So I figured that I should put it down when I sort of was getting a little bit over it, and now I've been working on it again and enjoying it. So I can see the end, and I'm looking forward to getting it done because the temperatures are getting cooler out here, and it will be nice to have this on and keep my bottom half warm as I'm working in the studio. So this is being knit from some Bendigo Woolen Mills luxury 8-ply yarn in the koala colorway, and I think it's coming up really, really nicely. One thing that I've noticed is that I'm using the higher sharps interchangeable needles, and as the temperatures are getting cooler, these needles do feel a little bit chilly to pick up when I start knitting on it on an evening, but they do warm up, and maybe that's just me putting the heater on and realizing that the room was a bit cold to begin with. So I'm still loving my higher sharps, but they do feel cold in cold temperatures because they're metal. I'm still completely wowed by the fact that the way that the stitches work creates such beautiful patterning. So there's this gorgeous thing going on down the front panel, which I think is just amazing, and I'm pondering other ways that I could use that stitch pattern to create other things, because I think it's gorgeous. So lengthwise, a few more inches to go. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it exactly to the length that the pattern calls for, or just a little bit shorter. There haven't been too many people who have already knit this, and I think only one of them had pictures of it being worn. The other ones were worn on a mannequin. And a mannequin that was just a top half. So it's hard to see where it actually drops down to, and then it depends on where I wear it on my waist. So I've been trying it on a little bit just to get a sense of how far to go. So that's that. I'm still on the second ball, by the way, and I have a feeling that that's all I'm going to need. So these are 200-gram balls. I have a third one just in case, but it might then go off into other projects. I have some socks on the go, which I mentioned. So last year I took part in the Miss Click Clack Tricolour Block Sock Knit Along, and essentially it is a knit along that runs for a few months for people to knit socks that have 3 Miss Click Clack colours, and I love her yarns. And I took part last year and made some socks and managed to win a nice swag load of prizes. So I'm taking part again. I can't imagine that I'm going to win again, but these are my colours. And when I saw these in her shop, I just had to have them. I love my browns and my greys, and so these are absolutely perfect. So this one is called I Smell Coffee, and absolutely beautiful, beautiful brown. This one is called MS Currawong 80, and this one is called Ansel Adams, and these are on her Merry Creek sock yarn base. Now the Ansel Adams is something that I've had my eye on since the last Tricolour Block Sock KAL, because I saw other people knitting with it and it was gorgeous, but also the name Ansel Adams just has a bit of a nostalgic twang for me, that when I was living in London, I had a boyfriend who told me that my photographs reminded him of Ansel Adams's photographs, and I'd never heard of Ansel Adams at that stage. But I did some research and checked out the photos, and so it's just a little bit of a nostalgic sort of feel to be reminded of Ansel Adams and that boyfriend from long ago. My photographs were nowhere near as good and beautiful and amazing as Ansel Adams's landscape photography and everything, but he did a lot of black and white photography, and I used to adjust my photos and take them in a way that I could make my blacks and whites more extreme. So love, love, love this yarn. So this is the first of my socks. So I allowed myself to knit one sock, and then I figured that once I got this one done, I'd hop back onto my skirt. Once I got my skirt done, I'd hop onto the second sock. So before I cast on, I did some sketches of what I could do with 3 colours, because there's all sorts of different ways to combine them, and it's very inspirational to look through the knit along threads for previous years and for this year to see what other people are doing. There are so many different ways that everyone can come up with a completely different way, and they're all amazing. And just the way that Miss Click Clack pairs her trios makes the socks just absolutely sing. So she has some trios up in the shop at the moment, and I think that there'll be some more coming soon. I was having a bit of a look, and there are a couple of these particular trios left, and her trios are, or her minis are very substantial. That each of the ones that I got had about 50 grams or so in there, so you get sort of 3 or a skein and a half or so of the 3 different colors combined. So easily a pair of socks and some extras left over. So I did some drawings and had a bit of a play around and started knitting. I sort of had a basic idea of how I wanted to knit, and I started off with some stripes, and then as I continued I sort of changed my mind about what I wanted to do. Um, and I think that's what makes this so fun, and it was a very quick knit for that reason, because I was sort of letting my imagination go with me. I decided to do a eye of partridge heel over here. I decided to do an eye of partridge heel, and then I continued the eye of partridge stitch down, and it's essentially a slip stitch heel where every second row you shift the slip stitches so that they alternate. And I don't think I've done that before, so that might be one of the ones that I can count as my heels that I'm trying to do this year. I'm trying to do a few different versions of heels just to get a few more into my knitting repertoire. I really love the way that it looks. It's just absolutely gorgeous, the way that it knits up, and I think it's going to be nice and squishy. It has a very nice feel to it, and the reason that I continued it underneath the heel turn is for that squishiness. I love my heels to be nicely cushioned. I knit this sock with a 9-inch small circular. So this is a higher sharp 2.5mm. So the last time I tried a 9-inch circular, I used 2.25mm, and I found that my gauge was denser than normal. So I normally knit with double pointed needles on 2.25mm, but with the 9-inch circular, somehow, whether it was I was tense using the small circular for the first time, or whether it's just the grip changed my gauge. So I got the 2.5mm version, and I'm much happier with my gauge. I think that this is going to wear very nicely. It's not too bulletproof, and I'll do the second sock and see how it turns out. I'm hoping that the gauge stays the same. Sometimes my second sock is a little bit looser. My gauge sort of relaxes, but I'm sure it's going to be fine because I'm taking a bit of a break between the two socks anyway. For the second sock, I've been wondering whether I do the same patterning, but I don't think so. I think I want to just keep it interesting. So one option might be to reverse the way that my stripes are going. So I'd have the bigger brown stripes up here and the smaller brown stripes here. But I think that might not work with the way that I've got my heel broken into the Ansel Adams stripe. I think another option is to just swap my brown and my greys around, so that this one would have the grey stripes and the brown cuff, heel and toe. Or I might do a solid block of Ansel Adams and a solid block of the brown, or something completely different. But I think because it has 3 colours, no matter which way I knit the second sock, as long as I'm knitting it with 3 colours, it's still going to look like a pair. The colours are still going to be represented in both, so they're going to look amazing. So yeah, I'm really happy. I can't wait to get my other sock on the go, but I have to get my skirt done first. And one thing that I realised, Miss Click Clack has her cards that she has all the yarn details on. I've just popped the little ties from the skeins onto these, and so that's going to help remind me what the colorways are. Not that I probably need reminding, because I always keep the information up on Ravelry anyway, but I've been trying to think of ways to catalogue my yarn a little bit. So that was just a ready-made sort of card with the details, so I thought that was one way to try to do it. So that's it for all the knitting side of things, but I have been doing a fair bit of sewing. Obviously I have an Etsy shop where I make project bags, so I'm all the time sewing those, but I've also been tinkering and just having a bit of a play with the sewing machine and just trying to remind myself that there's other things to sew. So I've been doing some patchwork tinkering, and my little bunting back there is an example of some of that tinkering. I try to minimize my waste as much as possible with my Etsy shop, and so I hold on to all sorts of little bits of fabric. So once I've made up some project bags, I have little pieces left, so I decided to combine them in some bunting, and I thought it was a nice bit of decoration. I've been meaning to do a bit of bunting for the podcast for a while. I wanted to knit or crochet some triangles, but this ended up happening instead, so it was a fun little afternoon of sewing. I have also been making up some little mug coasters. So these are again from some little triangles, just making up coasters, and they were fun to play around with, and they're sort of positioned in different parts of the studio so that I can cart my tea around or coffee around with me as I make things, and I always have a coaster to put my mug on. I have also been continuing with my scrappy theme, making up some new double point needle holders. So these are a little bit different to the ones that I've been selling in my shop previously. These are a little bit shorter because I decided to do a slightly shorter version, and these are a bit loftier. They have a cotton batting or wadding on the inside, so they're nice and squishy, and they'll provide a bit more protection for metal needles. Not that my other ones don't, they have interfacing and work fine, but I love the squishy feel of these. So I've made up some, these ones haven't been put up into the shop yet. I'm taking photographs of them while this video uploads, so they'll be up in the shop soon, but they're for 6-inch double point needles, so they're good for even just storing your needles away while you're not knitting on something. You can still pop them in there and they won't come out. The longer ones are for 8-inch needles or 20cm needles, so they pop in there. They've got my Give Me a Crown logo on the inside, and they're also good for storage. The shorter ones generally work for crochet hooks as well, so popping a crochet hook in to your project bag as you go traveling around and working on projects means that you've got a crochet hook ready to go when you need it. And you can also put circular needles into these. You can put them into these as well, but depending on the length of your tip, these ones tend to be more suitable. But always measure your tips if you're thinking about using one of these for your circular needles. So they'll be going up into the shop along with some others. It's been a lot of fun trying to decide what order to put the fabrics in and what to coordinate. So some are a bit wild, some are a little bit more florally, some are a little bit more modern. They all vary a bit, but I'm having a lot of fun making those. I've also been digging around in my fabric stash and finding things that I've bought at some point in time intending to make clothes out of. So I'm thinking about doing some sewing for me. I'm realizing that I'm not getting a lot of clothing purchases done recently living out here, and that's okay. I don't need a lot of clothes, but I want to tinker with a sewing machine, so I might as well use up those fabrics that I've had intentions for in the past. So I bought these books some years ago. So this one is a Sweet Dress book, and this one is Clothing for Everyday Wear. And these are books that I'd seen in Sydney in a bookshop called Kinokuniya. Not that I know how to pronounce that, but it's a beautiful bookshop in the centre of Sydney. And I'd seen these in Japanese and had to flick through them a number of times and pondered buying them in Japanese, and just wasn't exactly brave enough. So one time I was flying through Hong Kong, went into a bookshop and happened to bump into these and found them in English in Hong Kong. So I've got them, and I've been meaning to make something from them for a very long time, and now is the time. So there's a lot of things in here that I wouldn't necessarily make for myself, but there's some interesting techniques that are shown, and what I'd like to do is just make a couple of there's some cute little dresses like that I can just wear about as I go about my daily business. And I'm not sure quite how well I'll go, but might as well give it a try. There's another cute little dress there. So things that I can throw on, then I can put a cardigan over the top, and we'll see. And even that top is super cute. So sort of see. I also dug up some printed patterns. So I've been watching some podcasts lately that have been where the knitters also talk about sewing a lot. So I've been definitely getting inspired. I even took my serger out of the box the other day, and it's one that my mum picked up at a garage sale years ago and gave to me, and I've never really used it. I've sort of checked that it seemed to be working, and that's about it. But last night I took it out, gave it a bit of oil, and managed to get it threaded and adjusted the tensions, so it seems to be going okay just on the fabric that I tested on. But I have some jerseys, so I'm thinking that I might do some leggings to start with, just by copying some leggings that I already have, and then maybe I'll be able to do some tops and things. But having the serger is handy, but for my business I prefer to use just the normal sewing machine. I feel like I have more control, and if something goes wrong I can unpick things, whereas with the serger it will chop things apart and I won't be able to rescue it. So I've used a serger when I was a kid. My mum had one and I used to zoom along with it, no problem. But I think now with the fabrics that I've got, I'm just a little bit more cautious about using it. But it might as well, I've got it, I might as well make use of it. And for things like knits, I think it's going to be a time saver to do that. Apart from that, not a huge amount has been happening. I went to Orange, which is a town nearby, a few weeks ago, and I went to visit a little park called Cook Park and stared at the trees. So I might have some footage in here of some of the trees that I saw there. It's a very nice and peaceful little park. So it was nice to sort of just see the change of seasons happening there, and just chill out for a little bit after the drive to Orange, where I bought my lawnmower. It's an electric lawnmower, or not an electric, but it's a rechargeable lawnmower. So it's better for the environment than a petrol lawnmower. It's quieter, which is nice, and it only runs for an hour and a half at a time. So it's made lawn mowing a little bit complicated because I putt along and then have to spend 2 hours recharging the battery before I can putt some more. So it's meant that my lawn mowing has sort of been a bit extended. I thought about buying a second battery for it, but hopefully with the temperatures dropping, the lawn shouldn't grow much more. Last year the lawn had stopped growing by the time that I moved here, so it was okay until the owners of the house that I'm house sitting sort of came back in late spring, and they did the lawn mowing through the summer so that was okay. But yeah, this year we've had some amazing days, and the lawn just keeps on growing. So I had to try to figure out the lawn mowing business. I could use a ride-on lawnmower, but I haven't been trained properly. I've ridden on it and I can drive it, but I don't really know how to start it or to fill the petrol. So I could figure it all out on YouTube, but I just prefer the rechargeable lawnmower, and it's good exercise. But I have some pretty big yards to look after, so hopefully that's most of the lawn mowing handled for the foreseeable future, and that should mean that I can do my knitting in the evening without having hands that are sort of sore from the vibrations and pushing it around. But I managed to find a kind of a flow with the lawn mowing where it was very enjoyable, sort of going backwards and forwards and just zoning out completely. So it's a bit like when I ride bikes or when I knit, that I can just sort of find myself in this happy little place where I just repeat a process over and over again, and it's all good. I am thinking about starting a knit along in June, probably a 2-month knit along. It's probably going to just be an anything goes. I've been trying to think of something that could encompass some adventure and fun, but I think I have one prize already lined up and may have another one coming up soon, either for that or for some other reason, but I should be able to share that with you next time. But yeah, maybe an anything goes knit along where just anything you finish can be popped in to the prize pool, but I'll announce that in the next episode, which I am intending to get out before the end of the month, so you'll then be able to figure out whether you can take part or not. But I'll chat about that next time. If you have any comments or questions, happy to answer anything that you want to know in reason. Pop by the Ravelry group. There's a thread in there for this episode which you can comment in, or you can send me a comment or a message on Ravelry. Instagram direct messages are a little bit iffy. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. It can be a bit hard to keep track of. But you can also follow me on Instagram and just comment on my everyday pictures if you want. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm really keen to get sewing, so I'm going to finish up. I'll get this episode edited and started uploading, get my photos done for the Etsy shop, and then I'm going to sew. I think I'm going to give myself a pretty breezy weekend after the busy ones that I've had recently with lawn mowing. I need some me time. I hope that you're well. I hope that you're getting lots and lots of yarn crafting and all that kind of fun stuff done, and that the weather is as nice out where you are as it is here, and yeah, that you're having a good time. I'll see you soon.